We're going to talk about shadows and strings and Domi Reversi today. So I'm probably going to fix this in a second. So that'll work. Still get some nice shadow play back here. So that'll work fine. Not like I'm not ghostly pale enough as it is. This video is kind of coming out of a couple of things. So the other week when I was doing the review for 1164, which by the time this goes up, 1165 should have come out. And I have not read that chapter yet by the time I'm recording this, but I wanted to get this as a video and get it ready to go out. And there could be something that happens in that chapter that kind of disproves part of this theory, but we'll see what happens. So I still think it's a valid thought. So one of the things that I've talked about prior on this channel is I did a whole video where I talked about how in Thriller Bark there's the whole setup of, again, the way that, like in Skypiea, that's kind of like a mini setup of like how the story is with, like, Inaru being the one in control of everything and all of that stuff, and it's, different factions, and they eventually have to work together in order to defeat the self-proclaimed god at the top of the hierarchy setup. And so you have all that. And then in the video that I did about, like, I don't remember exactly what I called it, but it was like something about bringing the sun through the shadows or returning the sun or something like that, where it was this kind of the setup of the way that Moria on Thriller Bark, with all of his zombies and everything, is a bit similar to the way that he enslaves people and their shadows and everything is similar to how a lot of the countries of the world and the citizens of the world and the slaves that the Celestial Dragons have literally are enslaved to the world government. And like that whole setup. And I do a much better explanation of it in that video, which I will link in the comment, or link in the description. So there's that. And I do a much better setup there, but part of the thing that hinges on is what happens to Sindri there. The other thing that I'm going to point out in this video is, and this is a thing that's been pointed out to me before, or that I've noticed before, and that other people have probably noticed as well, is the concept that in One Piece, there are several different devil fruits that allow people to be controlled and manipulated. Now, obviously, you can, Luffy can physically wrap around someone and make them move, but this is a little different. You have Moria, who is able to take someone's shadow and essentially trap them in eternal night unless they wish to end it, which is not a fun way of doing it. He traps them in eternal night by taking their shadow, so they are trapped from the sun, the way, trapped from the dawn, the way that, the world is, kind of trapped from the dawn at the moment, true freedom. Trapped from the sun god Nika, all of that concept. And then, Moria uses it to, make his zombies, his own warriors, power them up, things like that. And then you have Doflamingo, who also has the ability to control people and manipulate them with his strings, with his parasite thread. And we see him do this in the Dressrosa arc, where he, in the flashback in the Dressrosa arc, we see him use it to manipulate Riku, King Rinku, and his soldiers in order to make them attack the citizens and make it appear that Riku had gone crazy. And then he also uses it kind of during the climax of everything, when everybody's fighting inside of the he set up his like bird cage around the island. He uses the parasite threat in order to try to make a bunch of the citizens attack the other citizens, or make the Marines attack citizens, or make some of the other people that are there attack the citizens and attack each other and everything, in order to just cause more chaos and to break the will of the people even more. than he already has. His family also, in the form of sugar, has been able to enslave a good chunk of the population of Dressrosa, random Marines, random pirates, random animals that end up on the island by turning them into slaves and setting up the contracts to make it that they must obey the Don Quixote family. So we have those situations going on. And even in Wano, there is, even though it's not done with the devil fruit, there is obviously the citizens of Wano were enslaved essentially to Orochi and Kaido. And while some had it better than others, it still was not good for the majority of the population. But that's not really because of a devil fruit entirely. And then even in Totland, with Big Mom's devil fruit, you have the leave or life setup that she does, where, you know, she controls the population essentially by making it that, oh, if you want to leave, there's going to be a very big price you have to pay. But if you stay, there's only a very small price you have to pay. Bits of your lifespan, of your soul setup that she does. Now, I am only focusing on the canon devil fruits in this regard, because there is the one that is like the pet fruit or whatever that Breed has in one of the little filler arc things that is just disturbing on many levels, where he can make the collars and he puts them on Law and Luffy and Chopper and a bunch of other animals and everything. So there's that, which is just sad. So we're gonna ignore him because he's not canon right now, and he's not one of the fun non-canon characters either. If you want to go for a better version of the way that someone uses their devil fruit power to manipulate people, you can look at film Gold, where we have Tesoro, who uses his gold power to control the gold dust that ends up on pretty much anyone who makes their way into the island, into Gran Tesoro, where he is then able to use the dust to manipulate them, depending on what he's trying to do and how much he wants to play with them. A bunch of the people that he enslaved, the gold dust is used to make sure that they essentially do what they're supposed to, type of a thing. So, and yes, I'm aware that Tesoro is kind of based on Doflamingo and everything, so there's no argument there. They're both blonde and they both like pink, and they're both big performers to a degree, so can't say Doflamingo doesn't like to put on a show. So there's like those connections there that are very similar in that regard. And he even has like his own kingdom that he's, you know, essentially made. So you have that. And then you have Domi Reversi. And in Domi Reversi, that has been shown fairly clearly, both in the present, in the storyline on Elbath, with the giants being Domi Reversi, Dorian Bragi, and the others all being Domi Reversi. And now currently in the past, in the flashback arc, with God Valley going on, where you have a bunch of the Davy clan members that were Domi Reversi, and now you have Rocks being Domi Reversi, or Zebek being Domi Reversi as well. And we see this where he tries to fight against what Imu is doing, with, you know, Imu trying to, you know, force the Domi Reversi on him. We see him trying to resist that to the best of his ability, and then he still succumbs to it by, you know, him being made angry by Imu. And this part kind of goes off of something that is pointed out by Liam over on Grand Line Review, who you've probably seen far more than any of my stuff. But he's been kind of operating under the kind of assumption, or the theory, not assumption, but a theory, in regards to Domi Reversi, that it kind of acts as, the way that he puts it is like emotional quicksand. And that if you are, because we see when Dory and Bragi are affected by it, they're very angry at Imu, Gunko Imu, and the God's Knights, for the fact that they have, you know, captured the children, they're threatening the children, they've caused all of this damage already with the nightmare monsters and everything. They're burning the school and the library and everything, and just caused a bunch of this trouble, all these problems. And they're attacking Elbas, so they have every right to be angry. Their homeland is being attacked. So there's the question of Dory and Bragi are very angry when all of this is going on, and then Emu attacks them and, sets up the Domi Reversi on them and shifts them to bad and, gives them the power up and all that stuff. So, they get bigger, they get the wings and the horns. By the way, I don't think Rox got the horns in 1154. I don't think he did. I could be wrong. But I remember looking at those panels and I'm like, I don't think he has the horns. Now, that could be something that could be, fixed in the next chapter, in 1165, possibly, by the time this video comes out. Or it could be something that'll be edited and post and fixed that way. So be like, oh yeah, he should have had horns, type of a thing. But we'll see what happens with that. But or at least it didn't look like he had horns at that point in time when the original chapter came out. So what ends up happening is, in this concept, we have it that that Domi Reversi acts as emotional quicksand, and when you are attacked, that I think Emu's intention is to provoke you, and make it that you are clearly very angry about what is going on around you. The giants are angry about the fact that their homeland is being attacked. The Davy clan members are angry and scared about the fact that they were being hunted and everything on their home island. And Rox is, of course, angry. Xebec is, of course, very angry because of the fact that, his homeland was attacked. He just had to essentially slaughter his own father and grandmother and family, that had been Domi Reversi to fight him. And his wife and child are being threatened, and he is going to be essentially forced to try to go and end them himself. That's Emu's intention. So there's like that whole concept going on there. And so Rox has every right to be angry, but he's also trying to resist it. He's trying to stay focused on I have to protect my wife and son and everything. I have to protect the rest of the family that I have left, type of a thing, in regards to what's going on there. So there's that concept there. And the way that Liam described it in his review for it was, the setup is that, that it's emotional quicksand, that Emu, the last thing that it takes to send Rox over the edge is the fact that Emu is essentially threatening Harald and Elbath, and Emu knows that Harald and Xebec are friends, that Xebec considers Harald a friend, probably one of the closest things to a true friend that Xebec ever had, and so there's that threat there. And of course, Xebec doesn't like that Harald clearly keeps getting taken advantage of by the world government and everything, even though Harald let Xebec go, just before, when he was on his way to God Valley and everything. So there's that concept that they are true friends. And at the moment, it is very much this, Xebec and, Xebec is trying to resist the Domi Reversi, but bringing up Harald and threatening him and threatening Elbath, this pliable king, that he can be, used to manipulate Elbath and everything. That's Emu's intention. And currently, of course, what we're seeing in the storyline, at present day in the storyline, is very much that is happening. Elbath is being infected, is being attacked by the God's Knights and by Emu Gunko. Side note on that, Gunko has been revealed to have blue hair. And I don't remember if we've seen any of the other members of the Celestial Dragons or the God's Knights have blue hair. I mean, obviously we've seen other characters that have blue hair, Nojiko and Vivi being two of the most prominent ones, and Vivi, of course, being very especially connected to this with the fact that she is a descendant of Lily, and bears a very striking resemblance to her, and is probably one of the reasons that Emu is obsessed with Vivi, and wants Vivi. And there's, of course, the whole theory that, like, that Emu is possessing Lily's body and wants to use Vivi as a replacement, or that, Emu was in love with Vivi and wants to, or was in love with Lily and wants to, make Vivi their bride, essentially, force that on her and everything. But the fact that Gungo has blue hair and, like, one red eye and one blue eye, we'll see how that ends up playing out for, that setup there. But I was trying to think of, like, the last really prominent blue-haired character we had, and I'm like, Fukaboshi back on Fishman Island. And I'm like, I don't remember beyond that. That wasn't just like a random side character. Who's like in the background or whatever. But like there is this like whole setup there where it's just like, okay, well, Gunko having blue hair is like, that has to have something to do with why Emu has her around. Why Emu has kept her around and keeps her youthful and, is using her in this regard on Elbath. To be fair, in the current chapters for God Valley, Saturn doesn't have blue hair and he's being possessed by Emu, but that's probably because he's like the strongest one on the island that Emu can possess at the moment. Type of thing, even though Gunko is on the island. Same thing with Figarland, or same thing with Garling. It's just like, it's not Shamrock. I mean, Shamrock's on the island, but that's not the case in this regard because he's not connected yet to Emu. So there's like that whole concept there, but side bit there. But the setup is that, Harald is like this last thing that is used, threatening Harald pushes him over the edge and allows Rocks to be Domi Reversi. And then he attacks Kaido and he attacks Big Mom, and then him and Whitebeard briefly clash. And then he, then goes and tries to, attack Eris and Teach, who get popped away by Kuma, thankfully. And then there's the whole question of now he is facing down, or at least at the moment when I'm recording this, he is getting, facing down Roger and Garp, and is reaching out with his inner voice as loudly as possible. Kill me, end this, make this stop, essentially. Roger, Garp, you have to end this for me, type of a thing. That is his true internal voice screaming out as loud as it can, trying to get Garp and Roger to listen to him. And so that's kind of what's going on there. And Garp and Roger are both being able to hear it and everything because, I mean, like, we knew Roger had the voice of all things. This might be one of the only other times we see him have to deal with it besides with the Sea Kings. And then with Odin is there, and now Garp is revealed to have some level of the voice of all things. So we're going to see how that pops out there, how that, kind of filters out there. And assumedly, the next chapter, 1165, by the time this comes out, we'll have seen probably some bits of this battle happen. Possibly Rocks will be fully taken out by Roger and Garp working together, as, Sengoku said all the way back when we're first learning about the God Valley incident. Maybe there's some connection. We get some bits of that. We maybe get something else explained to us, all of that. And, Garp and Roger working together defeat Rocks enough, or give him enough of a way of like fighting that he's able to help them end him, or something like that. Some variation of that where he does go out with God Valley. So there's like those concepts there, and there's those connections there. And the other thing that kind of came out of this when I was doing the review was that there's also the theory that being Domi Reversi because it's, Domi Reversi is, returning home, to return to your home or something like that, because the Domi is like from domicile type of a thing for like Latin and everything. And so it's this question of, okay, if everything is, if you can only be Domi Reversi on your home island, and God Valley is stated to be Rock's home island, and the home island of those members of the Davy clan are all there, and they were all Domi Reversi'd, so that lines up there. The giants are the ones being Domi Reversi'd on Elbath. It would explain why, even way back when, when Rocks first interacted with Emu in the flower room, all those years ago, why they didn't, and why Emu didn't just, Domi Reversi him there. So there's that thought of just like, well, why didn't you just make him your servant there by Domi Reversing him if it was something that you could have easily done? But it's just like, no, I'm not on his home island. I can't Domi Reversing him here. Maybe it's just like a signal that goes off in Emu's power that says, oh, this person is on their home island, and I am here. I can Domi Reversi them or whatever. The one that I am possessing is here, and I can use my powers to Domi Reversi this person and take advantage of it. Because the only examples we've seen show a person being Domi Reversi'd on their home island, in their homeland. So really a good test of this would be, well, if one of the Straw Hats tried, if like the Straw Hats are possibly at threat of being Domi Reversi'd, like if it doesn't work on them, like if we see the power try to work and then it doesn't, it's like, okay, well, there's something going on there. Or if they try to like Domi Reversi Lilith, or try to Domi Reversi like Bonnie or something, who is like not native Elbath, not native to Elbath by any means, that it's like, oh, or like Scopper or something. Well, Scopper's injured right now, but you get the idea. Where it's just like they try to Domi Reversi the person, but it doesn't work because they're not on their home island. So it's just like, okay, well, that's not going to work. And so there's that theory there that, feeds into that concept where it's just like, well, you have to be on your home island for Emu to be able to Domi Reversi you. And the thought that I had on that one was like, well, there is literally a whole standing population of celestial dragons up on Marijois, where you have, now, whether or not the Gorosei were each born in Marijois, like if they're members of like if each of them are like former kings back during, the 19 kings who stayed there that formed the celestial dragon families, if they are some of those ones, or if they are other ones that have like proven themselves over the centuries, and Emu, made each one of them, one of the Gorosei as time went on, or whatever. Discarded one Gorosei, picked another one, whatever the setup is. Like what just happened with Saturn on Egghead Island. With Saturn, okay, you've displeased me one too many times. I took your power away and now you're dead. And now I'm going to essentially give that power to Garling and make him the new Celestial Dragon, make him the new Gorosei. And then there's the whole question of like, okay, given the fact that Loki was offered the chance to become a God's Knight and become a Celestial Dragon, and that Gunko seems to have a similar setup to that, we know that there are some of the God's Knights that were possibly not born on Marijois. And even in that regard, Shamrock was not born on Marijois. So he would only be able to be Domi Reversi. Same thing with like Shanks. They were born on God Valley. And God Valley is, to the best of our knowledge, gone. So they would not be able to be Domi Reversi even if they were, attacked by Emu. They're immune to it. And so there's that whole concept. There's also the concept that, like, well, even if, because, like, there's the whole theory of, like trying to Domi Reversi Blackbeard. It's just like, well, Blackbeard, God Valley is gone, so if he was born on God Valley, that's not going to work. And even if he was born on Lelucia, and then Rox took him and Eris and left them on God Valley, Lucia is gone, so can't be Domi Reversi there. So unless he was born somewhere else, then it's the whole question of like, okay, well, um, where are we gonna? We can't Domi Reversi him. He doesn't have a home island. It's gone, type of thing. And like the same thing would apply to like you'd have to get Luffy all the way back at Dawn Island. Now, to be fair, having Dawn Island be the place that is like one of the like part of one of the last battles or something, with the the battle for the new age, the dawn of the new world, happening on Dawn Island, where Luffy's journey first began, would be a bit of a poetic way of ending something out, of like a bit of a nice poetic flourish on the end of that. And that's a possibility there too, but less likely. But possibility. So we'll put a pin in that and maybe come back to it later if it becomes a useful concept. But on top of that, you have the whole setup that you have this standing population of these celestial dragons up at Marijua. You have possibly the Gorosei, depending on stuff. You have the God's Knights, and you have, the main fighting force would be the God's Knights and the Gorosei if, Marijua was ever attacked. Yes, they have, like, the Marine Admirals that they can use, like what just happened during the Reverie, and they would technically have some of the soldiers that are there, but even then, not much of a fighting force that they have sitting and lying in wait should they be attacked. And we saw how much damage the Revolutionary Army was able to do with their sneak attack ability, with their guerrilla tactics. So there's that setup there, and Marijua still has not recovered from that. And they could continue to do similar types of attacks, because like the admirals can't use their full power in Marijua because they could injure the celestial dragons, and of course Aramaki would not dare to try to do that. And Akainu probably would like to make the celestial dragons just go away and just cover the entire area in magma and get rid of them. He doesn't seem like he likes the celestial dragons anyway. And then of course we know that Fujitora tried to essentially have a meteor hit was going to have a meteor hit Marijua to try to take out the Revolutionary Army commanders that were there, but that also would have gotten rid of the celestial dragons as well. It's like, two birds, one meteor. Is like kind of that concept there in his mind. And even then, I'm like, well, I can't argue with you there, dude. So there's like that concept there. There's, what we've seen there for, the vague fighting forces that would be available there. But if it is truly that, well, maybe that's one of the reasons Imu has allowed these celestial dragons to stay where they are, to have this amount of power that they've had for, going on 800 years at this point in time, and letting that power get to their heads to a degree. So there's that. But what if there's also like another side to it, where one of the reasons Imu allows this is to have it be that when Marijua is actually attacked by a big enough force, Imu can just literally Domi Reversi all of these celestial dragons that are there, because Imu doesn't care if they live or die, really. Just Domi Reversi all of them, and any of the ones that were most definitely born on Marijua would get Domi Reversi'd. They wouldn't necessarily be the strongest fighting force, but they would be cannon fodder, essentially, going, fodder soldiers going up against any of the Revolutionary Army, or going up against Blackbeard's troops, or going up against like the Straw Hat Grand Fleet, depending on how everything would pan out. And or whoever is attacking Marijua at that point in time. Something seems to be happening in Marijua currently in the story, but that hasn't been fully explained yet. And it could be the Revolutionary Armies attacking. It could be that the Blackbeard pirates are attacking. It could be a combination of one on one side and one on the other. And maybe Emu doesn't want to reveal that Domi Reversi trick to the other celestial dragons at that point in time yet. It's just like, and flip, and, no, you're all just gonna get slaughtered for all I care, but you're gonna try to take out as many of the enemy as possible, because you do get a power up, and you do get bigger. So, even for the celestial dragons, and I made this comment to my mother, I'm like, you know what? Most of the celestial dragons, like Charlo, Shalria, the other ones, you take away their weaponry, like you take away the gun or whatever that they have, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure I could beat them up, which isn't saying much, but it's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I could beat them up. I don't think I'd be able to beat up many of the gods' knights, or probably any of the gods' knights, to be quite honest with you. But, the regular celestial dragons, it's like you take away their pistol or whatever, and I'm like, I can handle you. The pistol gives them a bit of an unfair advantage because I am not bulletproof, unlike Luffy. Or Big Mom, or Kaido. Or, well, I don't know. Do we know if Rocks was bulletproof? We know that Whitebeard was not cannonball proof. And Ace was not fist proof, but Ace was kind of bulletproof to a degree once he had his devil fruit. But I would be able to take on one of the regular celestial dragons pretty easily if you get rid of them having a pistol of some kind or whatever, having like some type of a weapon. It's like I can deal with them probably. I at least have some amount of like knowledge when it comes to dealing with that type of a thing. I may not be able to take out too many of them, but if I aim for certain body parts, I should be fine. Actually, family jewels on any of the men. Unlike Charlos or Roswald. I hate both of them so much. So there's like that whole setup there. But the other thing that I wanted to point out with this, and this is feeding off of the theory that I had about about like Luffy freeing, the people on Thriller Bark from Moria's grip, from him holding their shadows and everything. And to be fair, I made that video a while before we knew anything about Domi Reversi. That was quite a while ago that video came out. So it didn't have anything to do with, like, this was before we knew that Domi Reversi was even a thing. We knew Emu was a thing, but we didn't know that Domi Reversi was something that they could do. I don't remember if it lined up where we knew about the Gorosei being able to transform, but that's a little bit left up for debate. Because I don't remember exactly when that video came out. But we have it that, throughout the story, obviously part of the theme of the story, or kind of the storytelling setup, is that Luffy, almost anywhere that he tends to go, by the time he leaves, things are to a degree better. Now, that is not 100% always the case, because necessarily by the time Luffy left Marineford, things were not better. Ace was dead, Whitebeard was dead, a bunch of the Marines were dead, several of other pirates were dead. And Luffy was very badly injured and essentially, broken at that point in time because he just lost Ace after doing everything he could to get him back. And same thing with Sabaody. Yes, he punched out Charlos, and yes, he, with Rayleigh's help, they freed a bunch of the other slaves, so they were able to escape, but that wasn't necessarily leaving Sabaody in a huge amount difference. I mean, we know that the Human Auction House is still closed down. But not necessarily 100% better. And yes, Fishman Island is better. And we know that, Dressrosa is better. And Alabasta is better. And, Drum Island is better. And Wano is vastly better. Egghead is kind of gone to a degree, or under the control of the world government at this point in time again. So better or worse is a bit left up for debate there. And at the moment, we're not exactly sure how Elbath is going to end in regards to, are things going to be better or worse? By the time the Elbath storyline is ended. But generally, if Luffy gets to a place and leaves, Skypiea, stuff like that, by the time he leaves, things are better. Not perfect, but better. Same thing even with like Water 7 to a degree. Um, and many of the other towns and villages and stuff like that they were at East Blue. Kokoyashi Village is better. Orange Town is better. Certain villages, I guess, slightly better, but that was more just because Kuro is gone. Django's life got better after everything that happened there. He found a true friend in Full Body. Um, we have no idea what happened to Kuro. He's just somewhere. Um, Shell's Town is technically so you get that idea that there's like stuff is better for various places after Luffy visits them, and not all the time, but most of the time. Impel Down, they freed a bunch of the prisoners. To be fair, a lot of those prisoners probably shouldn't have been freed, and now a lot of them work for Buggy, or they've gone to be Okamas with Eva, but they're at least kind of helping with the Revolutionary Army at the moment, so there's that. Um, so there's that. Um, but kind of what ends up happening is, as Luffy, even, prior to having his power awakened on Elbat, on, Wano, as, Nika and everything, his Nika powers, his Gear 5th powers, he was still helping people, and he was doing it with a smile on his face most of the time. And it's the concept that I have is like, okay, clearly there's that representation there. And throughout the story, we've seen several of the other devil fruits that deal with controlling people and being able to manipulate them have various weaknesses. For Moria, with his shadow abilities, it allows, him being able to, you get salt in the zombies, and that'll generally free the shadow. You defeat the zombies, like what happened with Ryuma, that will free the shadow. You defeat Moria, knock him out. That general setup frees the shadows so they can go back to their original owners. And then even, there's a bit less of that when it comes to Doflamingo, but even with that, it's like, you knock him out and the parasite threads stop working, so they're kind of, innocuous at that point in time. Or if you have strong enough will, or if you're able to have someone cut the strings for you, that would free you that way. And then with Sugar, obviously you have to knock her out in order to, release people who have been toyified. So you have that. And then with Domi Reversi, we're trying to figure out, okay, well, Rox kind of resisted it a little bit, but he still fell into the Domi Reversi. He still, succumbed to it. And if it's that emotional quicksand where it's just like, if you're really, really angry when you're affected by it, it can push you into Domi Reversi even faster. And, the theory is that because, like, for Reversi or for Othello, which is kind of what it's kind of based on, is like, all the black pieces, you need to try to flip them to white. With your, with your abilities, you need to try to flip them to white with your game pieces. And, Luffy being this represented as, like the sun god, his Nika form and everything, his Gear 5th form is, white and very, cloud-like and everything else like that. It's like that setup. So him being able to try to affect the people who have been Domi Reversi'd is the thought of like, well, what if he's able to make them laugh somehow? Part of Luffy's abilities have becoming more and more cartoonish throughout the course of the series, and then now that's even been ramped up even more because of Year 5th. We saw that during the initial, when he fights against Kaido on Wano, and then we saw that in Elbath, or excuse me, in Egghead. We saw his, powers there and everything with the way, with the, turning the tree into the bat and, a bunch of other stuff like that where he's just trying to be funny and just finding funny ways of, dealing with stuff and, fighting his opponents. So Luffy then trying to use that ability to try to get other people to laugh. And of course, we also have Bonnie being able to access her Nika form, her freest form, Her, both of them having those abilities would be, trying to, line up their pieces to try to Domi Reversi back, the giants back to being normal. And as far as we're aware, it's, we know that one of the reasons Zebek wanted Harald to join his crew was to eat some type of devil fruit that um, they had on Elbath, some type of treasured devil fruit that they had on Elbath. Now, we're kind of thinking that maybe this is what is the Nika devil fruit that Luffy now has, or is this the actual gum gum fruit that, because of what happened with the information about the devil fruit, it got swapped, or that, some other variation happened with it. And then Shanks ended up with it, and then he had it on Dawn Island, and then, at Fuchsia, and then Luffy ate it, and that's what's going on there. Was it, Rox's intention to try to get Harald to eat the devil fruit because he thought that Harald would be able to then awaken the Nika abilities? Because we know that Eris says, when she's running away, oh no, you're having to fight him now, even though you're not ready yet. You weren't prepared for this, to fight him now, type of a thing, to fight against Emu now. You're being forced to do this now to try to protect, myself and our son. And so there's that concept there that okay, Rox was apparently looking for something else, or trying to get something else before going after Emu, before trying to go and fight Emu again. Now, whether that was the darkness fruit that Blackbeard ended up getting, whether that was the Nika devil fruit, whether that was something else that he was looking for, we're not sure. And of course, there's the theory that, Luffy is the embodiment of the descendant of Joy Boy, and Blackbeard now as this embodiment of the symbol of Davy Jones. Maybe both of them having to work together would be what it takes to try to defeat Emu. But then it's the whole thing of okay, well, how much is Teach actually holding on to what Davy Jones originally fought for, or how much has it been twisted and corrupted, type of a thing. So again, we don't know. But the thought that goes along with you make the people laugh that have been Domi Reversi'd, and that can be enough to flood them with joy enough that it flips them back and reverses them the other direction. So now they're white and powered up, but now it's not anger that's fire, anger and hatred at the moment that's fueling them. It's joy, it's hope, that type of a thing. And so there's that whole flip concept there. Because as the thumbnail shows, is does Sindri hold the key to this? And Sindri was kind of one of the things that I very much based the other one on, about the Thriller Bark, returning the sun to Thriller Bark, or whatever video it was that I made, where Chopper and Robin are the ones that are fighting against Sindri and Hogback. Now, Chopper and Robin have figured out that Sindri is very much not doing this of her own volition. Her zombie, her, Hogback kept her corpse, and now she's been turned into a zombie with some other lady's shadow. And Sindri probably doesn't actually want to be here. And Hogback is just very abusive to her, as I went over in the twisted love videos that I talked about when I was doing the couples. So in this regard, we know that Sindri is very much against her will, having to follow Hogback and Moria's instructions, to having to obey them. And has been in that position for quite a while at this point in time. And Chopper is trying to get through to her. And Chopper is actually able to get through to her at one point in time, it's like, you're a human, you are supposed to be free, that type of thing, that he's like yelling at her as like Robin is trying to like deal with Hogback, along with like the other like Jigoro zombie that's there, and then the penguin one that has Sanji's shadow in it are there as well, and like they're having to like fight them at the same time as like dealing with Sindri and her plates and everything. And Chopper is able to like essentially kind of jolt Sindri's heart a bit. And the anime does a beautiful job of animating this, where you see like just like the memories of Sindri that would be with the body kind of flooding back through her and reminding her about being human, being alive. And what ends up happening is, she then like freezes in place, and like more, Hogback is trying to order her to do something, and she won't. She's like standing there and crying as, it's very similar to what's going on here, where it's just like Zebek is being forced to try to go and kill his wife and son. And now he's going to have to try, now he has to fight against Roger and Garp. And he's still crying as all of this is going on. Because we see him crying as he's being Domi Reversi because he doesn't want to do this. It is going very much against him. Like, he probably didn't want to attack Kaido or Big Mom or Whitebeard. Yeah, he may not have had the best relationship with his crewmates and that type of a thing, but they were still his crew, type of a thing. So there's that whole setup there. And he is, his inner voice is screaming out for Rox and Garp to end him, for like Roger and Garp to end him, to end this. So that way he's not forced into this position again, because he just had to deal with his own family being put into this position and having to fight them himself. And now he's being put into this position where he's the one who is not in control of himself anymore. And he has no idea how to get out of this. It doesn't just involve his own end, his own death. And Sindri, back on Thriller Bark, was, she wasn't, it was like something where it was fighting against the controls that like Moria and Hogback had over her, and essentially breaking it herself and kind of freeing herself. And then I think she is stepped on by oars, in all honesty. I think she stepped on by oars. But like one of the last things that we see her do as she like looks at Chopper and Robin is that she smiles at them for freeing her, as like thanks for freeing her. Now, her shadow was not fully freed from her body, or fully freed and returned to its original owner, until a little bit later, because Moria pulls the shadow out of it when he does his Shadows Asgard, and then that is finally, freed when Luffy, finally defeats Moria. And all the shadows just get out of Moria, for a less eloquent way of putting it. And, they all get returned to their original owners. Robin, Sanji, Zoro, they all get their shadows back. Luffy gets his shadows back. Lola and her crew get their shadows back. All the other people on Thriller Bark get their shadows back. Other people in other areas around the world, including the lady who had her shadow taken and put into Sindri, like they all get their shadows back, and they are freed from this nightmare, this long nightmare of not being able to go into the sunlight without being destroyed. And this whole, this being in like eternal night essentially set up there. And even on Dressrosa, when, Doflamingo was in control of everything, they were kind of in this kind of like, not full on eternal night, because like they clearly had like, day and night and everything else like that. Same thing with Wano, but they were still not free. They had the people who were the toys, who were trapped in this setup and could be with the people that they loved, because the people that they loved had forgot about them, which is very similar to the fact that over the course of time, there have been multiple islands that have probably been destroyed by Emu, and Gorosei and whatever, either through buster calls or something else over the centuries, that have resulted in missing and lost islands. very much of what happened to like God Valley, and then now what has happened with La Lucia, stuff that happened with, Jaya with Shandora part of it and everything that got shot up into Skypiea and everything, where there are these lost areas, very similar to the way that, people's memories of their loved ones were erased when they are turned into toys by sugar. So that's just, something there. And like those things, like they all tie together, not in a perfect little bow, but they still tie together fairly well. So I wanted to get a video out about this. Information could slightly change depending on what happens in the next chapter, but I really wanted to get this video made and ready to go up. And then I have another video where I'm going to talk about death in One Piece, which is just such a happy topic. But that's what I have for this. I thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye.